Good morning, this is Mark from ITCU Solutions, and today I'd like to talk to you about installing Acronis Cyber Protection Cloud Agent using group policy on your domain controller. And this is pretty much a fresh install. You can see I don't have any managed devices yet. The one thing I have done is I did go through and create a protection plan here for my agents. And that will be one of your selections. If you don't create a protection plan, once you install all your agents through GPO, they'll basically just show up as unmanaged machines, which is fine. You can just manually assign them a protection plan. Okay, so the first thing we need to do when we do this is basically download the software to our domain controller. So in order to download software, we're just going to go on to devices, to our machines, click on show all options. And since we're going to be doing this on a Windows domain, on a domain controller, from a domain controller through GPO, I'm not going to be installing anything except for Windows client workstations. So we'll select that software package. Okay, I've actually already downloaded this to the server, so I'm not going to do it again. But all you normally do, just hit save, wait for it to download into your download directory. Okay, so once you're done downloading the software, the next step you would do, if you've already downloaded the software, again, you'd go back to device, you'd go back to your workstations, and you'd go back to add a device. But this time you're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and there'll be something called registration token. And we're going to generate a registration token because we don't want to use a username and password for credentials. We want to use this token instead. This token will allow all the agents to authenticate back to the cloud, basically to install the agents. So let's just generate a token here real quick. And the token lifetime is just basically telling how long you want to keep the token. For this demonstration course, I could just have it run for a couple hours and it would time out. For your case, depending on how you want to install this, if you're going to do like over a week or something, you'd want to change this to 7 days. If it's going to be less time than that, maybe you want to change it to something like 24 hours. I'm going to select a user. I'm going to just use my admin user, but you could use any user you want. Just remember, whatever user that you select, this is what your workflows will be assigned to for each agent. So if you're going to run some other type of scripting or anything like that, this would be the user that would that workflow would show up under for this particular agent. And before I created this plan, my protection plan, if I didn't select a plan, you can run through this and deploy it without the plan, but again, it'll just show up as unmanaged. I created one called Remote Workers because it has all the backup and the Cyber Protect antivirus and things like that included. So the next thing I'll have to do is just generate the token. Okay, I'm going to need this number later on when I create my MSI file on the server, because we're going to have a way for it to give the clients this information so they can authenticate in. So I'm just going to copy this right to a WordPad here. Okay, and I'm just going to minimize this, kind of just drag it down to the bottom so I can still see it. Okay. And so now that we have that token, we're good to go there. So now all we have to do is actually just create the actual MSI file from the application that we downloaded earlier. So I'm going to switch over to my domain controller. And I actually downloaded it to this device earlier today, so I will just go to my downloads directory. Now, when you deploy software through group policy, you have to have a shared drive. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to go right to my shared drive I created. Okay, and I'm going to just copy this or drag this over there to my shared drive. This is the drive it will be deployed out of. Okay. Now, just make sure you create a shared drive, and when you create a shared, just make sure that you're sharing it. Advanced, that you're, sharing it to everyone. And on the security side, for this example, I'm giving my authenticated full control. But I believe all you have to actually have is read and execute if you want to lock this down. And if you're in a production environment, you might want to do that. But in this case, just for ease of use, I'm just giving all my authenticated users full control. Because remember, the authenticated users have to be able to access this file in order to install the MSI file. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to run the Acronis software out of my shared drive, because that way it will automatically just create my files in this directory, which makes life a lot easier. And so we'll start this up, and once this gets to the install screen, that screen will also give us a choice to create an MSI and an MST file. We'll give it just 1 second here. Okay, so here down at the bottom you see we have a selection to create an MST and MSI file. So we'll click on that. Now it's asking us what to install, and for this case I want to install the agent for Windows. You probably want to install your anti-malware. I don't need my VMware. I don't need any of the Hyper-V stuff. Cyber Protect. Okay, that's basically all I want to install. So we'll hit done there. And I'm not going to change the default installation path on the clients. You could change this if you want to make it something more specific, like you might want to call it a Acronis agent or something like that. But I'm going to leave it as is. This is where we have to, if you were installing this on a domain controller, you'd have to use a different account that has service access. In our case, since I'm only installing this on clients, I can leave this use service on user accounts, because that has the access I need. And the last thing we need to change, whoops. So we got what to install, registration settings. Oh, my bad. So here's where we need to add the token. You could use user credentials up here, but we're avoiding that. So we're going to use that token that we generated earlier. It just makes life a lot easier, and from what I've tried this, it seems to work a lot better. So I'm going to type in my token here. It looks like it's 6E22. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to verify that's correct. 6E22-63734868. Now normally if you download this to your domain controller and you were doing everything on the DC to start with, unlike me who did it through a client to start with, you should be able to just cut and paste that. Okay, so we're done, and we're just going to proceed with creating that file. And I wanted to generate it, of course, in my shared drive, which is where we're at. And this is going to take a little bit to download these installation files, so I'm just going to pause the video. Okay, so the looks like it's done generating the MSI and MST files. As you can see, here they are. Here's my MSI file, and here's my MST file, and then of course all the additional associated files that the agent needs to install. Since we have all this in our shared directory now, and we know our clients have access to this share, all we have to do is actually go into the group policy manager. So let's do that. Okay, so let's go to our Group Policy Manager here. Now, in my case, I'm just going to do this to my computers OU on my domain. And the reason I'm going to do it on computers and not users is I want this installed per machine. I don't want it following users. I'm not going to uninstall it or anything as a user logs off or try anything like that. So we'll just do it to our actual computer OU here. So we'll create a GPO for that one. And we'll call it Acronis Deployment. Okay. It's claiming it already exists. So let me. Well, we'll call it Acronis Agent Deployment. Okay. So then we just need to edit that GPO. Okay, we're going to go down to, again, for the same reason, we're going to do this under computer configuration. So we're going to go to Policies, Software Settings. Okay, and then we're just going to do New, and we're going to deploy a software package here. And this is, by the way, is the way you do any software. It's not unique to Acronis if you're doing it through GPO. And you can see the MSI shows up here from Acronis. And most importantly, just make sure when you do this that you have a network share showing up here, because this is the information that's pushed down to your client. So your client has to be able to find this share, to find this MSI. So this is what your client sees. If it said C:/share, which yours probably does by default, this is only showing up because I've deployed other software through GPO on this domain controller. But just make sure that this is the network path, not your local path. Otherwise, the clients won't be able to find it. Okay, and because we also have an MST file, we have to click on Advanced, click OK. Okay, go to Modifications. All right, and we're going to add the MST file because we need both of them in this case for the deployment. And then hit OK. Okay, so now we have our Cyber Protect software ready to be deployed here through GPO. And this should be all we have to do through GPO. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to log on to my virtual machine. Okay. And I'm just going to force the policy. We'll do a GP update force to force it to install, whoops, the Acronis agent. Okay, as you can see, because we're in the middle of doing a software installation, we have to do a reboot. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing this deployment through GPO, you might want to have something done at the end of the day where you have your users just reboot their machine for the policy update to go before they leave, so they don't have to wait for it to install when it boots. So I'm going to just hit yes here to get it restarting. And the reason I say that you might want to do it at the end of the day, or at least if you're going to do it during the day, maybe schedule, if you have a lot of machines, schedule this out over several days, because it's going to take your machines when they boot up 4 or 5 minutes or so to download and install that software. That could be a fairly big strain on your network if you're trying to do it during the day when users are using it, and also the delay could be annoying to your users. This reboot's probably going to take a little while, so I'm going to pause the video. Alright, our workstation has booted back up. And I also went over and rebooted one of my physical workstations. I actually had to reboot it twice because I don't think the GPO policy had been pushed down yet. And it took a good 5-6 minutes for them to load the agent software. I have pretty old equipment. I think my physical machine's 4 or 5 years old. But my network should be pretty robust because there's not a lot of devices doing things on them. So that's something you might want to take into account too, how long your users will have to wait in the morning if you try to deploy a lot of these at the same time, if you're worried about the bandwidth on your network. Okay, so as you see, Acronis got installed up here, so I'm just going to jump back to our you can see there's no unmanaged machines, but I should see these machines unless under all devices because they did have a protection plan. Okay, and even though I installed the same Windows agent, it recognized that I had a virtual PC here. Tells you what it's VM. My CyberFit score is much worse on the virtual PC. I'll have to figure out why, because I think both machines are patched to the same level. But just remember in that step, I did add the remote workers protection plan. If I hadn't done this, these machines would have just showed up under unmanaged, and you would have had to manually go add those. But as you can see, everything seemed to work out okay. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I usually do check these videos for a month or two after I post them. And I hope this was helpful to everyone. I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.